Hello, everybody. This chapter is called The Bloodbottler. Suddenly, a tremendous thumping noise came from outside the cave entrance, and a voice like thunder shouted,
"Runt, is you there? Runt, I is hearing you jabblin'. Who is you jabblin' to, Runt?"
"Look out!" cried the BFG.
"It's the Bloodbottler."
But before he had finished speaking, the stone was rolled aside, and a 50-foot giant, more than twice as tall and as wide as the BFG, came striding into the cave. He was naked, except for a dirty little piece of cloth around his bottom. Sophie was on the tabletop. The enormous, partly eaten snozcumber was lying near her. She ducked behind it. The creature came clumping into the cave and stood towering over the BFG.
"Who's you jabblin' to in here just now?"
he boomed.
"I's jabblin' to myself,"
the BFG answered.
"Pilf fizzle," shouted the Bloodbottler. "Bug swallop,"
he boomed.
"You was talking to a human being. That's what I was thinking." "No,"
cried the BFG.
Yes,
boomed the Bloodbottler.
I was guessing you has snitched away a human being and brought it back to your cave as a pet. So now I is winkling it out and guzzling it as extra snacks before my supper."
Would you like to see a picture? Now, this is a little bit scary. The poor BFG was very nervous.
There's no one in here," he stammered. Why don't you leave me alone?"
The Bloodbottler pointed a finger as large as a tree trunk at the BFG.
"Runty little scrumscrewer," he shouted. "Piffling little schwish-flittler. Squimpy little bottlewort. Prunty little pogswiggler. I's now going to search the primroses.
He grabbed the BFG by the arm.
"And you is going to help me do it. Us together is going to winkle out this tasteful little human being,"
he shouted. The BFG had intended to whisk Sophie off the table as soon as he got the chance to hide her behind his back, but now there was no hope of doing this. Sophie peered around the chewed-off end of the enormous snozcumber, watching the two giants as they moved away down the cave. The Bloodbottler was a gruesome sight. His skin was reddish-brown. There was black hair sprouting on his chest and arms and on his stomach. The hair on his head was long and dark and tangled. His foul face was round and squashy-looking. The eyes were tiny black holes. The nose was small and flat. The mouth was huge. It spread right across the face, almost ear to ear. And it had lips that were like gigantic purple sausages lying on top of one another. Craggy yellow teeth stuck out between two purple sausagey lips, and rivers of spit ran down over its chin. It was not the least difficult to believe that this ghastly brute ate men, women, and children every night. The Bloodbottler, still holding the BFG by the arm, was examining the rows and rows of bottles.
"You and your pibbling bottles. What's you putting in them?"
"Nothing that would interest you," the BFG answered.
"You is only interested in guzzling human beings. And you is dotty as a dog's waggler,"
cried the Bloodbottler. Soon the Bloodbottler would be coming back, Sophie told herself, and he was bound to search the tabletop. But she couldn't possibly jump off the table. It was 12 feet high. She would break her leg. The snozcumber, although it was as thick as a perambulator, was not going to hide her if the Bloodbottler picked it up. She examined the chewed-off end. It had large seeds in the middle, each one as big as a melon. They were embedded in soft, slimy stuff. Taking care to stay out of sight, Sophie reached forward and scooped away a half a dozen of these seeds. This left a hole in the middle of the snozzcumber, large enough for her to crouch in, so long as she rolled herself into a ball. She crawled into it. It was wet and slimy, but that didn't matter if it was going to save her from being eaten. The Bloodbottler and the BFG were coming back toward the table now. The BFG was nearly fainting with fear. Any moment, he was telling himself, Sophie would be discovered and eaten. Suddenly, the Bloodbottler grabbed the half-eaten snozzcumber. The BFG stared at the bare table. "Sophie, where is you?" he thought desperately. "You cannot possibly be jumbling off that high table, so where is you hiding, Sophie?" he thought.
"So this is the filthsome, rotsome glubbage you is eatin',"
boomed the Bloodbottler, holding up the partly eaten snozzcumber.
"You must be cockles for guzzling such rub-squash."
For a moment, the Bloodbottler seemed to have forgotten about his search for Sophie. The BFG decided to lead him further off the track.
"That is the scrumptiddlyumptious snozzcumber. I's guzzling it gleefully every night and day. Did you ever try a snozzcumber, Bloodbottler?" "Human beans is juicier," the Bloodbottler said. "You was talking tummy rot," the BFG said,
growing braver by the second. He was thinking that if he could get the Bloodbottler to take one bite of the repulsive vegetable, the sheer foulness of its flavor would send him bellowing out of the cave.
"I was happy to let you sample it," the BFG went on. "But please, when you see how truly glumptious it is, do not be guzzling the whole thing. Leave me a little snitchet for my supper."
The Bloodbottler stared suspiciously with small piggy eyes at the snozzcumber. Sophie, crouching inside the chewed-off end, began to tremble all over.
"You's not switch fiddling me, is you?" said the Bloodbottler. "Never!" cried the BFG passionately. "Take a bite, and I'm positive you'll be shouting out, 'Oh, how scrumptiddlyumptious this wonder veg is!'"
The BFG could see the greedy Bloodbottler's mouth beginning to water more than ever at the prospect of extra food.
"Vegetables is very good for you. It's not healthsome always to be eating meaty things." "Just this once, I is going to taste this rotsome eats of yours. But I is warning you that if it is filthsome, I is smashing it over your sludgy little head."
He picked up the snozzcumber with Sophie in it. He began raising it on its long journey to its mouth, some 50 feet up in the air. Sophie wanted to scream, "Don't!" but that would have been an even more certain death. Crouching among the slimy seeds, she felt herself being lifted up and 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 up. Suddenly, there was a crunch as the Bloodbottler bit off a huge hunk from the end of the snozzcumber. Sophie saw his yellow teeth clamping together just a few inches from her head. Then there was utter darkness. She was in his mouth. She caught a whiff of his evil-smelling breath. It stank of bad meat. She waited for the teeth to go crunch once more. She prayed that she would be killed quickly.
"Ugh!" roared the Bloodbottler. "Ugh!"
And out he spat. If you look carefully, you can see Sophie flying out of his mouth. All of a sudden, the great lumps of snozzcumber that were in his mouth, as well as Sophie herself, went shooting out across the cave. If Sophie had struck the stony wall of the cave, she most certainly would have been killed. Instead, she hit the soft folds of the BFG's black cloak, hanging against the wall, and she dropped to the ground. Half stunned, she crawled under the hem of the cloak, and there she crouched.
"You little swine buggler," roared the Bloodbottler. "You little pig swiller.
He rushed at the BFG and smashed what was left of the snozcumber over the BFG's head. Fragments of the filthy vegetable splashed all over the cave.
"You is not loving it?"
said the BFG, innocently, rubbing his head.
"Loving it? That's the most disgustrous taste I've ever been touching my teeth with. You must be buggles to be swallowing sludge like that. Every night you could be galloping off, happy as a hamburger and gobbling juicy human beings like us."
"Eating human beings is wrong and evil," the BFG said.
"It is guzzly and glumptious," shouted the Bloodbottler. "And tonight I is galloping off to Chile to swabble up a few human chili beans. Is you wishing to know why I is choosing Chile?"
"No, I is not wishing to know anything," said the BFG, very dignified.
"I is choosing Chile because I is fed up with the taste of Eskimos. It is important that I has plenty of cold eats in this scuttling hot weather. And the next coldest thing to an Eskimo is a chili bean. Chili beans from Chile is tasting very chilly."
"Horrible! You ought to be ashamed," said the BFG.
"Other giants, they is saying is wanting to gallop off to England tonight to guzzle school chittlers," said the Bloodbottler. "I is very fond indeed of English school chittlers. They has a nice, inky, booky flavor. Perhaps I will change my mind and go off to England with them."
"You is disgusting," said the BFG.
"And you is an insult to the giant peoples," shouted the Bloodbottler. "You is not fit to be a giant. You is squinky and you're a little squiddler. You is a pibbling little pit squeak. You's a creamy puff nut."
With that, the horrible blood-bottling giant strode out of the cave. The BFG ran to the cave entrance and quickly rolled the stone back into place.
"Sophie?"
he whispered.
"Sophie, where is you? Sophie!"
Sophie emerged from under the hem of the black cloak. "I'm here," she said. The BFG picked her up and held her tenderly in the palm of his hand.
"Oh, I is so happy to be finding you, all in one lump."
"I was in his mouth," Sophie said.
"You was what?"
cried the BFG. Sophie told him what had happened.
"And there I was telling him to eat the filthsome snozcumber, and you was all inside it all the time. Oh, no!"
"Not much fun," Sophie said.
"Just look at you, you poor little chittler,"
cried the BFG.
"You's all covered in snozcumber and giant spit."
He set about cleaning her up as well as he could.
"I is hating those other giants more than ever now. You know what I should like?"
"What?" Sophie said.
"I should like to find a way of disappearing them, every single one of them."
"I'd be glad to help you. Let me see if I can think up a way of doing it." And here's the BFG trying to clean her off a little bit. Stay tuned, or tune in next time for the next chapter called Frobscottle and Whiz Poppers. This is my favorite chapter coming up soon. Goodbye.